Insurance isn't one size fits all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy, or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life, on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 166 of DBR Bites, Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason and Donald here for you. We're, in the interest of transparency, even though this may not come out till Saturday, you may not be hearing it till the weekend. We're recording this a little after 5 o'clock on Friday, the 29th of May. Donald, we got a couple little pieces of news, but before we get to that, you been up to anything interesting lately, my friend? What's going on in your life?
Well, I'm in Charlotte. I'm down here for the U.S. men's national team, the first of two warm-up games before we send them off to L.A. for the World Cup. So one game here this weekend, one in Chicago next weekend. I should be at both, but just been down here. I got in yesterday, Jason, so just really haven't done much except all the Zoom calls and all of the interviews and all of the podcasts and all the stuff that I need to do before the weekend hits.
But you're having a good time. That's the important.
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, it's always cool down here in Charlotte. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the weekend.
All right. So the first thing I want us to do is a little bit of a silly exercise, but we got the numbers, Donald. We got the numbers from the entire.
This is not silly,
basketball.
Jason. This is important work here that we're about to discuss.
So we know all the guys' numbers from the team. I'm most interested in the new numbers, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump. Actually, do you want to tell folks? Go ahead and tell folks the numbers if you got them.
Yeah. So let's get the old ones out of the way, right? Number one, in your hearts, number one in the scorebook is going to be Caleb Foster. Caden Boozer will remain at number two. There's no changes to the numbers from the returning guys. Number 5 is Sebastian Wilkins. Number 7 is Dame Sarr, and number 21 is Big Pat Gongba. Now, Jason, let's get to the new guys, and both freshmen and transfers alike. We're going to go in numerical order here. Deron Rippey Jr., he's going to be number 3. So that'll be a nice little number. Rippey, number 3. Drew Charnosky is going to be number 8. Bryce Howard is going to be number 12. John Blackwell will be number 13. Cam Williams, the heralded freshman, is going to be number 14. Maxime Meyer, the tallest guy on the team, at 7'1", at least until we get the official Boomshay height and weight. Maxime Meyer will be at number 15. Jacob Theodosiou, who's we talked about, Jason, on this pod, will be number 26. I'm gonna skip over Boomshay real quick. I'm gonna go to Nick Arnold, who is the walk-on, a guy who we didn't really hear about, and all of a sudden he decided, I'm going to walk on at Duke. He is going to be number 55. So, Jason, big shoes to fill. The legacy of Spencer Hubbard lives on at number 55.
Exactly, yeah.
So the next walk-on to walk onto the team gets the number 55, which I think is great. And Joachim Boomshay, he's going to be number 30. But when you look at the graphic that Duke men's basketball put out, his name, you're probably wondering, how are you going to get Boomshay onto the back of a jersey? We're going to stack it, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is the first time in Duke history that a name has been stacked on top of another on the back of a jersey. So it's going to read one line Boomshay, the second line Boomshay, and then 30 underneath it. Again, Jason, those are the new numbers and the old numbers. I will note, there's been some talk about Ife Ufechukwu and his status. I think we kind of talked about it as well.
Yeah.
According to a lot of the reporters out there, he will remain with the team, but he's not going to be on the roster after he had that knee injury. So he may be helping around in practice and things like that, but he's not going to be on the official active roster. But it seems like he's going to remain in some capacity within the program.
Yeah, my understanding is that if he has essentially retired from, competitive high level basketball, he's still at Duke. He's still attending classes in Fuqua. He'll remain a part of the program, like you say, as a non-rostered practice player / grad assistant. I think it's sort of like a grad assistant kind of thing where occasionally, if necessary, he'll go ahead and take part in practice. This is such a loaded roster that I'm not sure there are going to be a lot of occasions where we're going to need him to do that. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. First one is you mentioned that Boomche is going to be taking number 30. He has always worn in his career number 44, and that is because his father, Ruben Boomche, wore number 44 when he was at Georgetown. He wore it in the pros when he was he was in the NBA for a short period of time. So Ruben was number 44 and Joakim was number 44 for Barcelona. But at Duke, he's wearing number 30, and I think that is because number 44 is retired at Duke. It was worn by Jeff Mullins, one of the all-time greats before your time, before my time.
Before our time.
But there are still people out there who remember Jeff Mullins very, very fondly, and all of us remember your elders, your history, all that other kind of stuff. Jeff Mullins was number 44, and so Joakim Boomche couldn't wear 44, so he is wearing number 30. I also wanted to mention Nick Arnold, like you said, the fact that I'll be honest, when I saw the social media post that said this guy was like, "Hey, I'm an invited walk-on," I was like, I don't know anything about you. Well, the fact that Duke has included him on the list of jersey wearers means that he is officially part of the team. Just so folks understand, Nick Arnold, he played at Davidson Day School, which is a pretty high-end, very high-end program in North Carolina high school basketball. He's known as a guy who plays super hard, makes his opponents work really, really difficult. He's going to be obviously a scout team kind of guy, but I'm sure he will be an instant crowd favorite because, as you point out, that number 55 that he will be wearing will remind everyone of Spencer Hubbard. And Nick Arnold is only 5'11", so he's going to look sort of like one of the tiny under. He's not Spencer Hubbard. I think was even smaller. Spencer Hubbard, I believe, was listed at 5'9".
Yeah.
So
I don't think he was. I'm 5'9". The guy had an inch or two on him.
Yeah. So, but the crowd's going to love Nick every time he comes in the game. I'm super excited about that. And as long as you mentioned Jacob Theodosiou wearing number 26, there are people out there checking. I don't think there's ever been a number 26 at Duke.
No, there can't be. There couldn't have been because
right.
You were only able to do 6, 7, 8, 9s a couple years ago.
Right. Exactly. Those numbers. The numbers that can be shown on more than one hand were not allowed until fairly recently. And so, yeah, Jacob Theodosiou becomes the first number 26 at Duke. I also want to mention something about him that I heard recently, which is that he is planning on being a 2-year player at Duke. That he is, if the NCAA passes that 5-in-5, the 5 years of eligibility over 5 years rule, which basically means there's no such thing as a red shirt anymore. If they pass that, then he'll be a active member of this year's roster. But if they don't pass that, he is going to redshirt this year, so that he will have 2 years in the program. Now, we talked about Jacob Theodosiou when he committed to Duke, Donald, that he was sort of an unusual quote unquote practice player because this is a guy who is a double-digit scorer at a legitimate Division I program. Not a high major by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, low major, but still,
yeah.
Buckets are buckets.
Yeah, dude who scored 13 points per game at a Division I program. And you're sort of like, wait, this is a guy coming to Duke to not play at all? Well, it may be that they are eyeing perhaps some kind of role for him his second year in the program, a deep rotation kind of role, perhaps. Who knows? You need to see how kids develop. You need to see what the roster looks like and all those other kind of things. But the word is that Jacob Theodosiou is going to be with Duke for 2 seasons, not just for 1 year. Any kind of retention, Donald, any kind of retention you can get, that's a good thing. And, break glass in case of emergency. I mean, nice to have a 13-point per game score as your emergency deep fill-in kind of guy if you need him.
Right. And he's 6'4". So, he can scout most point guards in, that we will face next year, right? Just because of his height. And the fact that he's sticking around for 2 years makes me believe, like, again, kind of like Ufechukwu, he's going to go the Fuqua route, right? Be able to get another degree from Duke, and I love it. I mean, I think that continuity is what what a lot of us want, right? How do we keep some of our guys around while also trying to get the best players out there? And so some of these guys who are willingly coming to say, I know my role is to not play that much. I know my role is basically to be a scout player. I'll even redshirt if I need to just to get that extra experience and to keep within the program. That's the balance that we all want. We're going to have a couple one and dones. We're going to have a couple high profile, transfer portal guys, and we're going to have those glue guys that are just sticking around and maintaining the continuity of not just the team, but the legacy, right, of Duke, the program and the brotherhood. And like this time next year, he's going to be one of those guys who's going to be instilling what it means to be a Duke basketball player in the minds of the new guys who join us after next year.
Yeah. All right. So this is a true DBR Bites. Don't have a ton of content, but we now know the players. We now know the numbers. What about the schedule? Some important, interesting, and breaking schedule news coming at you after this commercial break.
You know that moment when you're cozied up at your favorite bar? That's what we do every week.
A lot of the stuff that I was doing back then, I look back and I was so silly and so crazy. I had a liquid nitrogen ice cream shop. The girls were wearing bikinis and lab coats and making liquid nitrogen ice cream from alcohol. And it was just like this only in Las Vegas crazy thing.
The Speakeasy is a raucous ride through the world of spirits, cocktails, bartending, and more. With hosts who know a thing or two about making drinks and drinking.
I don't want anybody to be apathetic about this brand. I want them to feel something, even if it's negative, hence our fresh FCK tagline. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on here.
Please. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pull up a chair and join us for the world's longest running cocktail podcast. The Speakeasy, out on Fridays, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're back from the break, and we have some scheduling news, some breaking scheduling news that literally came at us in just the past couple minutes, and that is that the Duke Blue Devils have signed up to be part of the Jimmy V Classic at MSG. It'll be the second game that we play at MSG this coming season. That'll make our friend Scott Rich very happy over there in Connecticut. He's like, how can I get Duke from my neighborhood of the woods? Well, Duke will be coming there in addition to playing Michigan, supposedly perhaps in the Amazon deal that we have. It has just been not officially announced, but the word has trickled out. The Duke will play in the Jimmy V Classic in MSG against Georgia. The other game in that doubleheader will be Alabama against Houston, but the Blue Devils will have the Georgia Bulldogs, a SEC team, usually like a bubble kind of team, maybe safely inside the bubble, that kind of thing. But Georgia's an interesting program for Duke to be facing, not as high profile as some of our other non-conference games. But Donald, I have a feeling this is sort of, be nice to ESPN. After ESPN let us do the Amazon deal, they now get us in the Jimmy V Classic, which will be on ESPN against UGA. I wish it was in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I can't get that for myself though.
Well, did they announce what date, or at least is there rumor about what date it would be?
I'm looking at it. I have not seen a specific date. The official date is TBD. So that's all I got.
Okay, because I only say that because the Jimmy V Classic is usually that first weekend in December. In New York City. And if it's that way, if it remains to be in that first weekend, that means that, Jason, that Thanksgiving to first weekend is going to be once again a loaded schedule like it was this past year.
Just like this past season, yeah.
Right? Because we're going to have the UConn game. We'll probably have some game over Thanksgiving weekend. We then would have the ACC SEC Classic or our challenge, of which we would be on the road. We've kind of basically educatedly guessed that it's going to be at Florida, kind of a return match from this past year. And then you would have to go back up to the Garden if it's that first weekend in December to play Georgia. Now, that is, like you mentioned, Georgia's not one of those high profile SEC teams, but they're a program that is trying to get to that status. They have been recruiting heavily over the past couple of years. They've been investing a lot in the men's basketball program to try and elevate its stature and elevate its prestige amongst other teams. And they've been wanting to challenge the Floridas, the Alabamas, the Arkansas, the Tennessees, the Kentuckys. And so This will be a good challenge, right? This is similar, Jason, to the Texas game that we opened with this past year, right? Texas is a
Right.
more of a high profile name, right? But the program in recent years hadn't been as up to speed as some of the other teams in their conference. And but still, it was a formidable opponent. It's a name that everybody knows, and no one's going to sit there and say, "Oh, why are we playing this team?" Right? This is a team that's physical most years, and they've had some great players come through there over the years, including a couple of guys. I mean, guys who have transferred on to be players that we've seen on the court with other teams, right? So they're a team that's trying to elevate their stature, and this is a great win for them to be a part of this. And then that other game, Alabama Houston, don't need to say much about that. That's going to be
Yeah.
a monster of a game.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of interesting. Usually in these kind of arrangements, whoever Duke is playing, the Duke game is always like the
marquee
primary
game,
or
yeah.
the marquee game. No slight on Georgia, but Alabama Houston may be the marquee game here for ESPN. I want to mention about Georgia very quickly that they've been in the top 40 each of the past two seasons. They were, in terms of Ken Palm, they were 38th in 2025, 35th this past season. They've been like an 8-9 seed the past couple of years. So exactly, this is one of those programs. It's a quad one kind of, neutral court. This is gonna be a quad one kind of game. Not a high quad one kind of game, but it's an impressive opponent, not someone that you should overlook by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, this is a Georgia program that feels like it's a little bit on the rise versus where it was in the past. And you mentioned players. Yeah, Georgia gets some really good players in there. None other than Anthony Edwards. I don't know, one of the 5 or so best players in the NBA. Spent his 1 year in college basketball playing for the Georgia Bulldogs. So yeah, Georgia is. I'm pleased with this. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, and again, it's a different opponent, right? It's a team that we don't see often. It's a team
Right.
that you kind of see in again, that first round of the NCAA tournament. You're like, oh, I haven't really seen much of them this year. This is one of those teams, and I think it's great to kind of have some of those newer, not newer opponent, but like an opponent you haven't seen in a long while, to kind of make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the other piece of scheduling news. This came out in just the past day or so. The ACC has announced all the home and away opponents, who your who your main your opponent that you always play. We know who we always play home and home, but the team that you sort of your rotating home and home opponent, all that kind of jazz, and the one team that you will miss each year. As you recall, last year Duke played. We played a home and home against UNC, like we always will. And we had Louisville as the other team that was our home and home, and we did not play Miami at all. Well, so this year the ACC has announced all this, all the opponents, all the matchups. Duke will have our home and home with North Carolina, like we always do, and the team that is added that we have a home and home with, that that is sort of a rotating home and home, is Virginia. And this year Duke will not be playing at all against Virginia Tech. Donald, it's very clear at what the conference is trying to do. They're looking at a team like Duke, who is projected to be the best team in the conference. The team, we are the highest profile, most marquee matchup out there. And so what they do is they give us the best opponent they can as our rotating. Last year it was Louisville. Louisville was expected to be a top 10 team. They were in the top 10, top 15 all year. This year it's Virginia. Virginia's expected to be in the top 10, top 15. Virginia's bringing back just an incredible, they literally are bringing back like 2/3 of a really, really good roster, including Tista Ritter, who was their best player last year. He'll be back on that squad again this year. Really impressive job of retention by UVA, and most people are projecting them to be the second best team in the ACC. So the ACC said, well, let's not make things easy for Duke or for Virginia and give them, sort of an extra game against each other.
And this is the tinfoil hat, right? It feels like some of these decisions are made because teams try to convince the ACC to put Duke as one of their home games so that they can get that marketing, right? They get the season ticket boost, they can get the marketing boost, the extra premium on ticket revenue. And so when you look at the home only schedule, the only ones you kind of knew, right, was Cal and Stanford, because we went to California last year. And
right.
That's always going to rotate. They've said that. But FSU, Miami is really the most high profile of them. It's the first time that we get to see Jay Lucas since he left Duke to take over at Miami, because as you mentioned, we didn't play them at all last year. And even in the tournament, they lost right before we would have been able to face them. So we have Cal, FSU, Miami, NC State, Notre Dame, Pitt, and Stanford. And when you look at that, I'm sure season ticket holders are like, throw us something here. Give us one of these games that is expected to be tough at home. Yeah, sure, you get UNC and UVA, but teams like Louisville, teams like SMU, teams like Clemson, we get all those teams on the road. And teams that have tripped us up or at least made it very, very difficult for us over the past couple of years, we get all those teams on the road. Now, I say that, Jason, the schedule is difficult, right? And when you compare it to other schools that you expect to be competing with for the top of the ACC, our schedule is way more loaded than theirs.
Yeah.
But we also just lost twice in the last 2 seasons of the conference. And last season we beat every team we faced in the ACC. We didn't face Miami, so we didn't have an opportunity to beat them. But everyone else we faced over the course of the regular season in the ACC, we beat them at least once. So I'm curious as to what the rationale is for the rotating portion of things. I guess the home and road will kind of work itself out, but like the Virginia Tech is probably the one here who's just throwing up their hands like, dang, we don't even get to play them once. Because again, even having Duke on the schedule where they go on the road gives more interest to some of these teams that are looking for any kind of boost, especially in the basketball air quotes dog days of January.
Yeah, look, of our home opponents, and I'm excluding the UNC Virginia games because those are home and home, so there's sort of a balance there. But yeah, of the teams that Duke is playing at home, the only two that I would say are certain to be picked in the top half of the conference are NC State and Miami. The other teams we're playing at home, and look, I don't know, teams rosters are still being put together, things change and happen, and you never know how teams.
You still got to play the games.
Yeah, you got to play the games, but the rest of these, the Cal, Florida State, Notre Dame, Pitt, and Stanford, I don't think any of those teams I'm necessarily optimistic are going to be in the top half of the ACC. I'm not saying for sure they're in the bottom, but they're, like I said, again, the only teams that I really think for sure are in the top half are Miami and NC State. The other thing I wanted to note about all this was, the ACC obviously didn't just announce what's happening with Duke. They announced the entire conference schedule. Again, no dates, just the, home away aspect of it. Donald, I'm going to tell you right now that when the time comes to pick the ACC standings, who's going to do well, who's not. Clemson. I'm going to pick Clemson to do pretty well in the ACC this year, and here's why. I don't know who Clemson bribed to get this schedule, but this is a very, very favorable schedule that Clemson got. First of all, the team that they're skipping, the team they don't play at all, is UNC.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Yeah. So, Duke, Virginia, UNC's probably picked third in the ACC right now. I guess Louisville, Duke. But anyway, those four, Duke, Virginia, Louisville, and UNC, those four are the clear 4 top teams in the conference, at least according to the early projections, the such. Clemson gets to completely skip UNC. You know what else? You know who Clemson gets as their as their home and homes? Again, remember, Duke has UNC and Virginia as their home and homes. Clemson gets Florida State and Georgia Tech. Now, not 2 programs. It's not like you're getting BC and, I don't know, someone else who's just at the absolute bottom. But those are not 2 impressive teams. Those probably are, even the road games there, my bet is Clemson will be picked as a favorite in those games. What's more, Duke and Virginia, the top 2 teams in the league, Clemson gets both of them at home. Donald, I don't need to tell you how much trouble Duke has had winning at Clemson over the years. So I think Clemson's schedule is really, really favorable for them. And then the other team that I kind of like, Miami's schedule. Miami's 2 opponents that they have double games against, home and home, are FSU and Pitt. I think that's a pretty favorable schedule for Miami compared to the other teams at the top of the conference.
And look, it's dealing with the rotations that they have, right? Or not the rotations, but the rival partners that they have. Ours is going to be UNC. So on paper, right there, you're already getting 2 tough games. And then when they add the rotating one in the first 2 years that they've done this, they've added what we believe to be one of the top 3 teams in the conference as that other rotating partner. For Miami, they're kind of blessed because they get Florida State as the rival. So Florida State over the past few years hasn't done well. So on paper, it looks like those two games, good. They have an opportunity to really take advantage of that home and home. Again, it's about that rivalry partner and getting Pitt. And Pitt's going to have a very pivotal year. I think you and I have talked briefly on this pod over the course of the past year or so about Jeff Capel and him being able to turn that around. And this is going to be, feels like really going to be that make or break year for him at Pitt. If they can't get to the NCAA tournament or show that they're having progress here, there may be some changes coming over there at the Zoo. So I think when it comes down to it, again, you still got to play all the games. Some of these teams last year had some very easy schedules, and guess what? They were still looking up by several games to Duke in the standings. And we just have to approach every game knowing that every team knows, especially these teams that only get us once. I think what we learned last year is every team is going to throw everything at the game when they come to town or when we come to town, because that's the one chance they have to boost their resume and to show the NCAA selection committee that, hey, we can beat some of the top teams, not just in our conference, but across the country. Clemson's, in a way, if you think about the NC not avoiding them, that's one opportunity they have where they can't show the selection committee that they can win a big game. So there's that side of things too. And for us, we have to understand that every game is almost like a microcosm of itself. Everyone's going to approach that game and say, this is Duke. We have to win this game. We have to show that we can hang with them. And that is why John Shire is like, okay, you're going to throw this great schedule at us? Fine. We're just going to beat everybody. And so that's the next step, is instilling in this into the rest of this team that, hey, the schedules, it may look like there's a lot of different teams that have joke schedules. This is not a joke conference, and every team is going to be out to get us, and we have to play our best on every given night, because you only sometimes are going to get one chance to play a team and beat them. And you want to look back at the rest of the season and say at the end of the season and go, everyone in the ACC, we came, we saw, we conquered. To do that, you have to play well against all of them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree about that. By the way, I want to mention one other thing. I talked about sort of the top four teams in the conference, the teams that likely Duke is going to be competing with for the very top of the league. And we know that Duke plays UNC twice. We know that Duke plays Virginia twice. The other team that Virginia will play twice is Virginia Tech. The other team that UNC will play twice is Louisville. Duke and Virginia top two, Louisville and UNC next. It's not a coincidence that the ACC has matched those teams up to make sure they play home and homes. And then actually the other team that Louisville plays twice, their non-rotating home and home, is SMU, which is a pretty good team. So you've got the top of the conference, top teams in the conference. Really looks like they're all playing pretty difficult schedules in the ACC.
And from the ACC's perspective, from the conference level, they want these high-profile games where the best teams in the conference are playing each other, because that's how they hype up the conference, and that's how they can put those games and tell ESPN, put that on Saturday night for everybody to see, so that everyone can see how improved this conference really is. Even last year, despite the fact that the ACC was much improved from the year before that, they had that stigma. And so it's going to take a couple of years for people to recognize that, hey, these teams are actually really good. Just because they play Duke and sometimes we're getting slaughtered, that doesn't change the fact that these teams are really good. It just may mean that last year's Duke team was that great compared to the rest of the ACC. But the ACC wants these marquee matchups. And to do that, it's clear that they're just going to schedule them so that the best teams play each other.
Exactly. All right, that's going to wrap it up here for us on the Duke Basketball Roundup. I do want to mention really quickly that we're getting some hints, some word about who may be the new assistant coach at Duke. It is not a familiar name. It is not someone that people have associated with the Duke program in the past. It's actually a guy who is currently connected to a NBA G League team. His name is KJ Conklin, but it is not a sure thing. He's currently with the Austin Spurs, the San Antonio Spurs G League team. He's coached at Texas in the past. He's someone he's young, but considered a real, analytics, player development kind of guru sort of guy. But we don't have confirmation that he's the name. I'm going to go ahead. We'll do more on him if he turns out to be the guy that Duke is actually bringing in as the new assistant coach. It would sort of follow John Shire's pattern, though, of looking for guys who have NBA connections, guys who are, young, analytical, considered really, really smart guys, rising stars in the business, for Shire to be looking at a guy like that. But we'll see. We don't know if it's going to be him or not. All right. I'm about to head out of town. So you're going to hear a lot from Scott Rich over the next couple of weeks while I'm not around. But Donald will be here, even though he's going to be very, very busy with the World Cup.
Yeah, the World Cup's coming up. I'll still be around. Somebody has to have the keys to the Porsche. So Jason's going to be out of the country. It's going to be me. I'll take him.
There you go. All right. Until they hit you up next, or maybe if there's some huge news, I may try and zoom in from someplace in Europe, someplace in the Mediterranean. We'll see about that. I wouldn't count on it.
It doesn't work well. So we'll have your vacation.
Thank you. All right. He's Donald. I'm Jason. The Mediterranean is beckoning me. This is the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home.